In Skagway, a mountain biking trip takes a terrible turn.
They found the hiker's body in the wilderness.
My son died after being at the wilderness.
The wilderness calls to us with its pristine beauty and promise of adventure, but beneath that serene exterior lies an unforgiving reality. Every year, thousands venture into nature's embrace, but not all return. While most hiking mishaps involve minor injuries or brief moments of being lost, certain cases have transcended ordinary misadventure, becoming legendary for their peculiar, terrifying, or simply inexplicable nature. These aren't just stories of wrong turns or weather miscalculations, they're windows into nature's darkest potential and sometimes humanity's as well. What follows are the cases that continue to haunt our collective outdoor consciousness, reminding us that sometimes the trail leads to places we never intended to go. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, with its misty peaks and lush forests, draws millions of visitors each year. But for the Martin family, this natural paradise became the setting for an enduring nightmare that continues to baffle investigators and haunt park rangers more than 5 decades later. On June 14, 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Martin was camping with his family at Spence Field, a popular mountain meadow. It was Father's Day weekend and the atmosphere was jovial as Dennis played hide-and-seek with his brother and other children. With a mischievous smile, Dennis crept away to hide behind a bush, planning to surprise everyone. It was the last time anyone would see him alive. When Dennis failed to reappear during the game, panic quickly set in. His father, William Martin, immediately began searching, soon joined by other hikers in the area. Within hours, what began as a family outing transformed into one of the largest search operations in the park's history. Over 1,400 people, including Green Berets, National Guard troops, local volunteers and experienced trackers, combed the dense wilderness. Helicopters equipped with infrared sensors scanned from above, while tracking dogs attempted to pick up the boy's scent below. The search was complicated by a severe thunderstorm that struck shortly after Dennis vanished, washing away potential tracks and evidence. For 2 weeks, searchers battled rugged terrain, dense undergrowth, and steep ravines, but found no definitive trace of the child, no clothing, no footprints, nothing. The case took an unsettling turn when Harold Key, a tourist hiking with his family about 5 miles from where Dennis disappeared, reported hearing a terrifying scream, followed by the sight of a rough-looking man carrying something across his shoulders, moving stealthily through the forest. This account raised the specter of abduction, yet investigators could never firmly connect it to Dennis's disappearance. Alternative theories abounded. Some believed Dennis had been attacked by a bear or other predator, though no animal attacks had been reported in the area for years. Others suggested he might have fallen into one of the park's many cave systems or become disoriented and died of exposure in the harsh elements. The FBI eventually joined the investigation, but reached no conclusions. The Dyatlov Pass incident, deep in Russia's northern Ural Mountains, lies Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain, in the indigenous Mansi language. This remote peak became the stage for perhaps the most perplexing hiking tragedy of the 20th century, one that has spawned countless theories ranging from government conspiracies to supernatural encounters. In January 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers and ski tourers, led by Igor Dyatlov, embarked on a challenging expedition across the northern Urals. All were elite students or graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, seasoned in winter mountaineering. Their planned route was difficult but not exceptional for their skill level. What happened next, however, was anything but ordinary. When the group failed to return, a search party was dispatched. On February 26th, rescuers discovered their abandoned tent on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. The scene was inexplicable. The tent had been cut open from the inside, and 9 sets of footprints led away from it into the forest. Some prints showed people wearing only socks or even barefoot despite temperatures of 30 degrees, 22 degrees. Approximately 1.5 kilometers from the tent, beneath a large cedar tree, searchers found the bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko near the remains of a small fire. Despite the brutal cold, they were wearing only underwear. 3 more bodies, those of Dyatlov Zina Kolmogorova and Rustem Slobodin, were discovered at intervals between the tree and the tent, apparently having died while attempting to return to their shelter. It took 2 months to locate the remaining 4 hikers in a ravine under 4 meters of snow. These victims presented even more disturbing evidence. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had suffered massive skull damage. Alexander Kolovatov and Ludmila Dubinina had major chest fractures, and Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her facial tissue. Experienced forensic pathologists noted that the force required to cause such injuries was immense, comparable to a car crash, yet there was no external trauma to the bodies. The official Soviet investigation concluded that the hikers died from a compelling natural force, but sealed many documents related to the case. This vague explanation only fueled speculation. Theories have ranged from avalanches and katabatic winds to military testing, infrasound-induced panic, and even extraterrestrial encounters. Modern investigations have attempted to solve the mystery with scientific approaches. In 2019, a Russian government investigation concluded that an avalanche was the most likely cause, driving the hikers to flee their tent, after which they succumbed to hypothermia. However, this explanation fails to account for the bizarre injuries, the missing body parts, and reports of strange orange spheres in the sky observed by other hikers in the region that night. The Death Valley Germans. The vast, scorching expanse of Death Valley National Park embodies nature at its most extreme, holding the record for the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth, 134 degrees, height 56.7 degrees. It's a landscape that demands respect and preparation. In the summer of 1996, a German family's failure to appreciate these demands resulted in one of the park's most tragic and enduring mysteries. On July 23, 1996, Egbert Rimkus, 34, his son Georg Weber, 10, Egbert's girlfriend Cornelia Meyer, 28, and her son Max Meyer, 4, rented a Plymouth van in Los Angeles for a tour of Southwest America. After visits to Las Vegas and the Grand Canyon, they checked into the Furnace Creek Ranch in Death Valley on July 22nd. The next day, they ventured into the park's remote backcountry, signing the visitor log at the abandoned mining camp of Warm Springs. When the family failed to return their rental car and missed their flight back to Germany on July 27th, authorities were alerted. Park rangers found their van 3 months later, abandoned on a rugged, seldom-traveled road in Anvil Canyon. The vehicle had multiple flat tires and was high-centered on a rock. Inside, rangers found their IDs, empty water bottles, and a single beer can. A German-language note on the vehicle read, "We're going toward the pass," but there are several passes in the vicinity offering little guidance to searchers. Despite extensive search efforts covering hundreds of square miles, no trace of the family was found for the next 13 years. The case haunted park rangers and search and rescue volunteers who struggled to understand how 4 people could simply vanish in an area that, while remote, had been thoroughly combed by experienced searchers. The breakthrough came not from official efforts but from the determined work of Tom Mahood, retired physicist and search and rescue volunteer who became obsessed with the case. After years of research and numerous expeditions into the park's most inhospitable regions, Mahood discovered human remains in 2009 in an extremely remote area called Butte Valley, approximately 10 miles from the abandoned van. Forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to the missing Germans. Investigators determined the family had likely attempted to walk out after their vehicle became disabled, carrying minimal water in summer temperatures exceeding 120 degrees by 49 degrees Celsius. They apparently became disoriented in the featureless terrain where heat distortion can make navigation nearly impossible. With no shade and rapidly depleting water supplies, they succumbed to hypothermia within hours. What makes this case particularly haunting is how preventable it was. The family had a guidebook mentioning the dangers of Death Valley, yet ventured off marked roads in the hottest part of summer with minimal water supplies. They passed numerous signs warning against off-road travel and failed to inform anyone of their specific plans. Gary Hilton's Appalachian Trail murders. The Appalachian Trail, stretching 2,190 miles from Georgia to Maine, represents for many hikers a peaceful communion with nature. But between 2007 and 2008, this wilderness sanctuary was stalked by a predator who turned trail shelters and scenic overlooks into hunting grounds. Gary Michael Hilton, a drifter with a military background, would become known as the National Forest Serial Killer, forever changing the perception of safety in America's eastern woodlands. Hilton's known killing spree began in October 2007 when he encountered 24-year-old Meredith Emerson, an experienced hiker, walking with her dog on Blood Mountain in Georgia's Chattahoochee National Forest. Witnesses later reported seeing Emerson talking to an older man with a dog near the trail. When she didn't return home, a massive search was launched. 4 days later, Hilton was arrested at a convenience store while attempting to clean his van. He eventually led authorities to Emerson's decapitated body in exchange for avoiding the death penalty in Georgia. What horrified both the hiking community and investigators was the calculated nature of Hilton's approach. He posed as a fellow hiker, using his dog as a conversation starter. He targeted physically fit, capable women hiking alone or in isolated areas, often approaching them with questions about the trail or requests for help. His military training enabled him to move through wilderness areas with efficiency, and he was careful to dispose of bodies in remote locations. After his capture, investigations linked Hilton to at least 3 other murders in southern Appalachian wilderness areas. In December 2007, he killed John and Irene Bryant, an elderly couple hiking in North Carolina's Pisgah National Forest. Earlier that year, he murdered Cheryl Dunlap, a nurse whose body was found in Florida's Apalachicola National Forest. Evidence suggested there may have been more victims across the Southeast. Hilton's crimes were particularly disturbing because he specifically exploited the culture of trust that exists among hikers. The trail community has long operated on principles of mutual aid and camaraderie. Hikers help each other, share supplies, and look out for one another. Hilton weaponized this ethos, appearing as the friendly, experienced outdoorsman, offering assistance while calculating his attacks. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy and park authorities responded by enhancing safety messages, encouraging hikers to travel in groups, and installing emergency phones at certain shelters. Many hikers began carrying satellite communication devices and personal defense tools. The culture itself changed. The openness and trust that had defined the trail experience became tempered with a new caution, particularly among solo female hikers. Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon in Panama. The lush cloud forests of Panama's Boquete region draw thousands of hikers annually with promises of misty mountain vistas and exotic wildlife. But in April 2014, this tropical paradise became the backdrop for one of hiking's most perplexing mysteries when 2 Dutch women vanished without a trace, only to leave behind a digital breadcrumb trail that raises more questions than it answers. Chris Kremers, 21, and Lisanne Froon, 22, best friends from the Netherlands, arrived in Panama for a 6-week Spanish study and volunteer program. On April 1st, 2014, they set out for what was supposed to be a short-day hike on the picturesque Pianista Trail near Boquete. Armed with just a small backpack containing water, a camera, 2 phones, and some snacks, they were dressed for a casual walk, not an overnight ordeal. When they failed to meet their host family for dinner that evening, concerns quickly mounted. A search was launched, but the dense jungle and seasonal rains hampered efforts. The case broke open when a local woman found Kremers and Froon's backpack 10 weeks later, about 8 miles from where they began hiking. What investigators discovered inside has fueled debate and speculation ever since. The backpack contained both women's phones, a camera, Froon's passport, sunglasses, and 2 bras neatly folded inside. The phones told a chilling story. Beginning on April 1st, shortly after they were reported missing, there were 77 emergency call attempts over 10 days. Only 1 call successfully connected, but disconnected before communication was established. The battery on Kremers' iPhone depleted first, but Froon's phone showed systematic attempts to call emergency services at specific times of day until its battery died on April 11th. Even more haunting was the camera's memory card, which contained 90 photos taken between April 8th and April 11th, a week after they went missing. Most were taken in near-complete darkness, appearing to be flash photographs in a jungle environment. Some showed a small stream, some showed what appeared to be bits of plastic marking a trail, and some showed the back of Kremers' head with what some analysts believe was blood visible in her hair. 2 months after their disappearance, scattered bones were discovered near where the backpack was found. DNA tests confirmed they belonged to the missing women. Kremers' bones showed strange phosphorescent, bleaching patterns not consistent with normal decomposition in a jungle environment. Froon's bones, by contrast, still had skin attached, indicating a different decomposition process. Theories about what happened range widely. Some believe the women simply got lost, attempted to survive, and eventually succumbed to the elements. Others suspect foul play, pointing to inconsistencies in the evidence and the unusual condition of the remains. Still others suggest a fall or injury that left one woman incapacitated, with the other attempting to seek help, but ultimately becoming lost herself. The Jameson family tragedy. In October 2009, Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson and their 6-year-old daughter Madison vanished while exploring rural land in the Sunsbois Mountains of southeastern Oklahoma. Their disappearance and the circumstances surrounding it became one of the most baffling mysteries in modern American hiking history, one that remains largely unsolved despite the eventual discovery of their remains. The Jamesons had driven to Latimer County, Oklahoma, to look at a 40-acre plot of land they were considering purchasing. They planned to live off the grid, away from what they perceived as the complications of suburban life in Eufaula, Oklahoma. On October 8th, they drove their truck up a remote dirt road near Red Oak. When they didn't return, a hunter reported their abandoned truck to authorities. The scene inside the vehicle immediately struck investigators as bizarre. The family's malnourished dog was found barely alive inside the truck. The Jamesons' IDs, wallets, phones, and about $32,000 in cash were left behind. A GPS unit showed they had been systematically searching the area, presumably evaluating the property. Most disturbingly, police found a strange Polaroid photo of Madison looking sad, which didn't match the family's other photos of their normally cheerful daughter. The search effort was extensive, with hundreds of volunteers combing the rugged, heavily forested terrain. Despite using cadaver dogs, helicopters with thermal imaging, and ground teams, no trace of the family was found. The case grew cold until November 2013, when deer hunters discovered skeletal remains about 3 miles from where the truck had been abandoned. Forensic testing confirmed they belonged to the Jameson family. What elevates this case beyond a typical wilderness tragedy are the circumstances surrounding the family before their disappearance. Friends and relatives described dramatic personality changes in both Bobby and Sherilyn in the months prior. They had lost weight, appeared withdrawn, and spoke of spirits they believed were haunting their home. Sherilyn's father suggested the couple had become involved with a religious cult. Bobby had filed a protective order against his own father, claiming he was a threat to the family. Security footage from their home captured Bobby and Sherilyn moving items to their truck before their trip. They appeared to be in a trance-like state, methodically loading the vehicle without speaking to each other, moving stiffly as if in a daze. This footage has fueled speculation about their mental state. The medical examiner was unable to determine a cause of death for any family member. The remains showed no obvious signs of trauma, though they were heavily decomposed after 4 years of exposure to the elements. Investigators never officially closed the case, acknowledging the many unexplained aspects. Theories about the Jameson family's fate range from murder to suicide pact to accidental death from exposure after becoming lost. Some investigators believe they encountered illegal drug operations in the remote area. Others point to the possibility of mental illness, noting that isolation in wilderness areas can sometimes exacerbate psychological conditions. Israel Keys's trailhead abductions. While most wilderness dangers come from nature itself, sometimes the most lethal predator on the trail walks on 2 legs. Few embody this threat more chillingly than Israel Keys, a methodical killer who turned remote trailheads and recreation areas across America into hunting grounds for nearly a decade before his capture in 2012. Unlike many serial killers who develop a specific victim profile, Keys selected his targets based primarily on accessibility and isolation. He meticulously planned his crimes, burying murder kits containing weapons, tools, and cash near potential abduction sites, sometimes years before returning to use them. These caches were often buried near hiking trails, campgrounds, and boat launches, places where people might reasonably go missing without immediate alarm. Keys's methodology was particularly terrifying for outdoor enthusiasts because he specifically exploited the vulnerability of remote locations. He would fly to a chosen area, rent a car, and drive hundreds of miles to retrieve his pre-positioned supplies. He then hunted for suitable victims, focusing on trailheads and recreation areas where people might be momentarily separated from groups or where couples could be found alone. His known victims include Bill and Lorraine Currier, who were abducted from their Vermont home in 2011, and 18-year-old barista Samantha Koenig, taken from an Anchorage coffee stand in 2012. However, before his suicide in jail in December 2012, Keys alluded to at least 8 other victims across the country. FBI investigators believe he may have killed as many as 11 people between 2001 and 2012. What makes Keys particularly relevant to hikers is his admission that he specifically targeted remote areas where he could control access points. In FBI interviews, he described staking out trailheads, boat launches, and campgrounds, noting patterns of use and identifying vulnerable targets. He once told investigators, "There is no one who knows me or knows that area well enough to suspect me. You could have 40 or 50 people looking, and they're never going to find it." Keyes was only caught because he broke his own meticulous rules. After abducting Koenig, he used her debit card across the southwestern United States, creating an electronic trail that eventually led to his capture in Texas. Without this error, he might have continued his predation indefinitely. For the hiking community, Keyes represents a sobering reminder that the isolation that makes wilderness experiences so rejuvenating can also create perfect conditions for predators. His case has influenced how park rangers and wilderness guides advise visitors about safety, emphasizing the importance of hiking in groups, leaving detailed itineraries with trusted contacts, and carrying emergency communication devices. The Lost Pacific Crest Trail hikers. The Pacific Crest Trail (PCT) stretches 2,650 miles from Mexico to Canada through some of America's most challenging and beautiful wilderness. Every year, thousands attempt to hike sections of this legendary trail, and a few hundred brave souls attempt a through hike of the entire route. While most complete their journeys safely, the PCT has claimed numerous lives over the decades, creating a somber counterpoint to its reputation for transcendent natural beauty. Among the most haunting disappearances was that of 34-year-old Christopher Sylvia in 2016. An experienced hiker attempting a southbound through hike, Sylvia vanished in Washington's Glacier Peak wilderness during an early season snowstorm. Despite having proper equipment and wilderness experience, he seemingly walked off the trail and into oblivion. Search teams found no trace beyond a single set of tracks diverging from the trail into deep snow. His disappearance highlighted how quickly even seasoned hikers can become disoriented when weather obscures trail markers. That same year, hiker Chris Fowler disappeared in the same region during another October snowstorm. The 34-year-old was last seen near White Pass, Washington, roughly 350 miles from the Canadian border. Despite extensive searches involving helicopters, dogs, and dozens of volunteers, no definitive trace of Fowler has ever been found. His case underscores the PCT's particular danger during shoulder seasons when sudden weather changes can transform manageable terrain into life-threatening conditions. Perhaps the most widely discussed PCT tragedy involved 19-year-old Marvin Novo, who in 2019 attempted to cross a swollen creek during the historic Sierra Nevada snowmelt. Witnesses reported seeing him swept away by the current. His body was recovered 2 miles downstream days later. Novo's death became a flashpoint for discussions about risk assessment on the trail, particularly as social media has glamorized through hiking without always emphasizing its dangers. The southern portions of the PCT present different but equally lethal hazards. In 2013, John Donovan, a 60-year-old experienced hiker, died after becoming disoriented in a snowstorm in Southern California's San Jacinto Mountains. Though he managed to call 911, rescuers couldn't reach him in time. His body wasn't discovered until 2015, just 2 miles from a major highway but hidden in difficult terrain that search teams had previously covered. What makes PCT disappearances particularly troubling is that they often occur on a well-marked, well-traveled route. Unlike truly remote wilderness areas, the PCT sees regular traffic during hiking season, with hikers often traveling in loose groups or bubbles. Yet the trail's sheer length and the vastness of the wilderness it traverses mean that help can still be days away when emergencies occur. The trail community has responded to these tragedies by developing better communication networks. Trail angels, trail families, and online tracking systems help monitor hikers' progress, potentially raising alerts when someone fails to check in. Yet even with these safeguards, the PCT continues to claim lives, reminding us that long-distance hiking combines numerous risk factors: exhaustion, isolation, changing weather, and challenging terrain, creating situations where a single mistake can prove fatal. The Mount Hood disaster. Oregon's majestic Mount Hood stands as one of the most climbed mountains in North America, its relatively accessible slopes drawing thousands of ambitious hikers annually. But in May 1986, this popular peak became the site of one of the deadliest climbing disasters in American history when a school expedition turned catastrophic. The tragedy began when 13 students and teachers from Oregon Episcopal School set out on what was meant to be a challenging but manageable 2-day ascent of the 11,249-foot mountain. Led by experienced climber Ralph Summers, the group included teenagers with varying levels of climbing experience and 2 additional adult chaperones. They planned to climb to a shelter at 8,300 feet, spend the night, then summit and return the following day. Weather forecasts predicted deteriorating conditions, but the group proceeded with their plan. On the morning of May 12th, as they approached the summit, the mountain's notoriously volatile weather shifted dramatically. Temperatures plummeted below zero as winds exceeding 60 mph created whiteout conditions. Disoriented in the storm and unable to continue to the summit or descend safely, Summers made the difficult decision to dig snow caves for emergency shelter just below the summit ridge. The group separated into 3 snow caves to wait out the storm. What followed was a harrowing 18 hours as students and teachers huddled together against temperatures that dropped to 20 degrees with the wind chill. Some caves were better constructed than others, and as the hours passed, hypothermia began claiming victims despite their efforts to keep warm by huddling together. Summers eventually left the caves to seek help, staggering down the mountain in near-zero visibility until he encountered another climbing party who radioed for rescue. When rescuers finally reached the snow caves the next day, they found a scene of devastation. 9 climbers, 7 students, and 2 teachers had died from hypothermia. 4 students survived, though all suffered severe frostbite requiring hospitalization. The Mount Hood disaster sent shockwaves through the outdoor education community nationwide. Investigations revealed a cascade of factors contributing to the tragedy: inadequate weather monitoring, insufficient emergency equipment, questionable decision-making about proceeding despite forecasts, and gaps in leadership structure during the crisis. In the aftermath, school outdoor programs across the country rewrote their safety protocols. Mount Hood itself saw the installation of additional weather monitoring stations and improved communication systems. The tragedy fundamentally changed how educational institutions approach wilderness experiences, leading to stricter standards for guide qualification, mandatory emergency equipment, clearer protocols for aborting trips, and more conservative risk assessment. For survivors and victims' families, the disaster highlighted how quickly mountain conditions can deteriorate from challenging to lethal. Several survivors became advocates for mountain safety, speaking about how their experience taught them that mountains demand not just physical preparation, but humility and respect for rapidly changing conditions. Survival Gone Wrong, the Christopher McCandless story. Few wilderness tragedies have captured the public imagination as powerfully as the story of Christopher McCandless, immortalized in Jon Krakauer's book Into the Wild and the subsequent film directed by Sean Penn. McCandless's journey into the Alaskan wilderness and his eventual death in an abandoned bus have become symbolic of both the allure and the danger of seeking profound experiences in nature's most remote corners. In April 1992, the 24-year-old McCandless hitchhiked to Alaska after 2 years of nomadic travel across the United States. Having abandoned his privileged background, donated his $24,000 savings to charity, and even burned the cash in his wallet, he sought what he called the ultimate adventure, living off the land in the Alaskan wilderness with minimal supplies and preparation. Making his way along the Stampede Trail, McCandless discovered Fairbanks Bus 142, an abandoned transit bus used as a backcountry shelter. He set up camp there, hunting small game and gathering edible plants while keeping a journal of his experiences and thoughts. His diary entries revealed a young man experiencing both profound fulfillment and mounting challenges as the realities of wilderness survival tested his idealism. By July, McCandless's situation had deteriorated. His hunting yielded insufficient nutrition, and he was visibly losing weight. On July 30th, he wrote an alarming entry: "Extremely weak, fault of potato seed, much trouble just to stand up, starving, great jeopardy." His final, dated entry on August 12th simply read, "Beautiful blueberries." McCandless died sometime in late August, likely from starvation complicated by the consumption of toxic wild plants. Hunters found his body in September 1992, weighing only 67 pounds. Among his possessions was a farewell note: "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all." What makes McCandless's story particularly compelling is how it divides opinion in the outdoor community. Some view him as an unprepared romantic who died needlessly due to arrogance and naive contempt for basic wilderness precautions. Others see him as an idealistic seeker whose journey, though ending in tragedy, represented a courageous rejection of materialistic society in pursuit of authentic experience. The controversy extended to the cause of his death. Krakauer initially suggested that McCandless had accidentally poisoned himself by eating wild sweet pea, mistaking it for the edible wild potato. Later research suggested he may have ingested seeds containing a neurotoxin that caused paralysis and starvation. Others maintain he simply couldn't sustain himself on what he was able to hunt and gather. McCandless's story has had tangible impacts beyond the philosophical debates it sparks. The Magic Bus became a pilgrimage site leading to multiple rescue operations for hikers attempting to reach it. In 2020, authorities finally airlifted the bus from its location after 2 hikers died trying to reach it and many others required rescue. The West Memphis murders. While most wilderness tragedies stem from environmental dangers or personal misjudgment, some of the darkest chapters in hiking history involve deliberate human malice. The 1993 murders of 3 8-year-old boys in the Robin Hood Hills area of West Memphis, Arkansas, represent one of the most disturbing cases of violence in what should have been a safe woodland retreat. On May 5, 1993, second graders Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers disappeared while riding bicycles near their homes. The boys were last seen entering a wooded area known locally as the Trails, a small patch of forest bordered by residential neighborhoods where local children often played. When they failed to return home by dinnertime, their parents contacted police, who initiated a search. The following afternoon, searchers made a horrific discovery. The bodies of all 3 boys were found in a drainage ditch, submerged in the muddy water of a creek. They had been bound with their own shoelaces and all had suffered multiple injuries. The medical examiner determined they had died from multiple traumatic injuries and drowning. The brutal nature of the crimes shocked the small community. The woods where the boys had played were hardly wilderness, more an urban green space where neighborhood children built forts and played games. The murders transformed this innocent playground into a scene of unimaginable horror, leaving parents throughout the region questioning whether any outdoor space could truly be considered safe for children. The investigation quickly focused on 3 local teenagers, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr., largely due to Eccles' interest in occult topics and the prevailing satanic panic of the era. Despite problematic evidence and a confession from Miskelly that contained numerous inconsistencies, all 3 were convicted. Eccles received a death sentence, while Baldwin and Miskelly received life sentences. The case took a dramatic turn in the following decades as DNA testing revealed no physical evidence linking the 3 convicted men to the crime scene. After years of legal battles, they were released in 2011 under an unusual legal arrangement called an Alford plea, which allowed them to maintain their innocence while technically pleading guilty. Many now believe they were wrongfully convicted, with the actual perpetrator never identified. For the hiking and outdoor community, the West Memphis murders represent a different kind of wilderness tragedy, one where human malevolence transforms what should be spaces of innocence and adventure into scenes of unthinkable crime. The case fundamentally altered how many parents approach allowing children independent outdoor exploration, contributing to the modern phenomenon of reduced childhood access to natural play spaces. The murders also highlight how wilderness areas adjacent to communities can sometimes harbor dangers beyond those presented by nature itself. While statistically rare, such crimes have led to increased security measures at urban trails, more parental supervision of children's outdoor play, and in some cases, the installation of surveillance systems in parks and green spaces.